Hello everyone, welcome back to The Budget Sportsman. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. Today we're going to be talking about e-bikes. We're going to be talking about, are they all that they're cracked up to be for hunting? Should they even be legal for hunting? And we're going to be taking a look at this bike, my bike, the Aventon Aventure2. So as I mentioned, today we're going to try to answer some questions about e-bikes for hunting, like are they even worth it for hunting? Can you haul a deer out with an e-bike? Do you have to spend $3,000 up to $8,000 on a hunting branded e-bike like Baku or Rambo? Or can you get by with something cheaper? And then we want to answer the question, should these things even be legal for hunting on public land? Before we get into answering those questions, I do want to give you an overview of my bike that I've been riding for about the last 6 months or so, including this past hunting season, and it is the Aventon Aventure2, and I want to talk about my experiences and some of the features. But before I dive into that, I do want to be clear, Aventon did send me this bike for review. Now they're not paying me, they're not getting to see the video before you do, but they did send me this bike for free so that I can make this review and talk about hunting with an e-bike. First up, this bike is a fat tire e-bike with a 4-inch wide tire. It has a 750 watt hub style motor with a 15 amp hour 48 volt battery. So let's take a moment to talk about the power of this bike and the battery life. First, I found the power to be excellent on flat terrain or gentle grades. The bike has no problem at all getting up to the 20 mile per hour limit with throttle only, or up to that 28 mile per hour on some of the higher pedal assist modes. However, it's incredibly important to remember that this is an e-bike. It is not a gas-powered vehicle like a four-wheeler or side-by-side or a dirt bike. When it comes to hills, this bike is going to slow down quite a bit when you're using throttle only, but I have been able to climb some pretty steep hills even just using throttle only, but my speed definitely dropped almost in half. Also keep in mind that there's a big difference between riding on concrete and asphalt versus riding on mud, grass, and rough trails. The extra rolling resistance of riding off-road is going to increase the power output needed to be able to maintain speed. With all that said, even in off-road terrain, there have been very few hills that I have not been able to climb with the help of the motor and some good effort on the pedals. And now that brings me to battery life. The Aventure is rated for up to 60 miles on flat terrain using pedal assist modes, that's pedal assist 1, but the truth is I have struggled to get more than 20 miles on a single charge even when I'm trying to ride conservatively, because I don't ride flat asphalt terrain, and frankly, I like to go fast. The truth is, the faster you go, even on pedal assist modes, the more power output the motor is going to have to produce, which unfortunately is going to reduce your battery range. One thing I really like about this bike is it has a nice screen right here, and it does actually give you a meter showing how much power you're actually putting out on that motor and whether you're using a minimum amount of power or a maximum amount of power. And it does help me to be able to gauge how much power I'm using in any situation to try to preserve my battery life. Another thing to keep in mind about this bike in particular is that the max output of your motor is going to decrease as your battery percentage decreases. The output drop is minimal and not really noticeable until you drop below 50% of your battery life. But once you drop below 40% battery, your max output is going to start to drop off much more rapidly. The bike's still going to ride fine, especially on flat terrain, but it might struggle more on the uphills or when you try to ride at top speed. Speaking of top speeds, the bike is going to top out at 20 miles per hour on throttle only mode and 28 miles per hour in turbo pedal assist mode. As far as I know, these limitations are required by legal requirements. I'm convinced that with a full battery, this bike could easily pull more speed if it wasn't limited by regulations. At times in the pedal assist mode, when you are really working hard, you can actually feel the motor pull back once you reach that 28 miles per hour. So what happens if your battery dies completely? Well, that's one area where I feel like this bike falls short. It has 8 gear rings in the back and a single chain ring on the front. It is geared in such a way that takes maximum advantage of the power of your legs to get the most speed and control and comfort out of the pedal assist mode. But when you try to pedal this bike with no battery power at all, the gearing is too high to comfortably pedal this bike much distance at all. The Aventure 2 is equipped with a torque sensor, and while I haven't had the opportunity to actually directly compare this with a cadence sensor bike, I have found the torque sensor to be very natural and very comfortable and a very enjoyable ride. The bike also comes with a rear rack right here, which is really handy for strapping on gear. I've even strapped on a milk crate here and tried to haul around some smaller items as well. There's also a front rack available, but that comes at an additional fee. I should mention that I found the seat to be very comfortable on this bike, but you should also be aware that this bike is available both with a step-over version that has this top bar and a step-through version without the top bar. Now, I personally opted for the version with the top bar just for a little bit more frame rigidity for riding in rough terrain. You should also be aware that this bike is available in both a regular size and a large size. Now, I'm 6'1", and if you go by the chart, it would recommend that I would get the large size. However, I find this bike to fit me very, very comfortably in a regular, which is what I have here. For me, if I'm trying to get maximum leg extension like a road bike racer would want, then this bike is a little bit too short. It doesn't go quite high enough. But most of the time, I'm not out there trying to get that maximum power. A lot of times I'm riding with throttle or a little bit of pedal assist, and I want a comfortable seating position. And oftentimes I'll ride the bike without the seat even in its maximum height position. And so the regular fits me as a 6'1" tall guy really well, but it also fits my wife and other smaller riders just fine as well. So with a bit of an overview of the Aventon out of the way, let's talk about my experience using it this past hunting season and what I think. Personally, I hunt a variety of both public and private land. And unfortunately, e-bikes are not legal on almost all of our public land here in Pennsylvania, and that is a real bummer. The e-bike would have been perfect for several of my hunting spots this past year where it would have made accessing it an absolute breeze. Some of these spots are accessed by dirt roads that are gated and closed to vehicle travel, but would be absolutely perfect for the e-bike if only it was legal. That meant that my e-bike was used primarily on private land hunting. While I do have a four-wheeler, I found myself often going for the e-bike when heading out into the woods alone. The e-bike is quiet, it's really enjoyable to ride, and while it may not maintain the same speed up the hills as the four-wheeler, overall it's still a pretty quick way to access some of my hunting spots. I especially enjoyed riding the e-bike for quick trips to the woods for things like checking trail cameras. This year I even tried hauling deer out with my e-bike twice, but with very limited success. I did drag a doe out behind the bike with a little bit of success. However, keeping balance on the bike required some momentum. Trying to stay balanced while at slow speeds and trying to navigate some rough terrain was a real challenge. I also tried dragging a buck out behind the bike, and the extra weight of the buck over the doe made dragging it with the bike just about nearly impossible. However, I have used a bike cart to haul my kids around behind the bike with absolutely no issues at all, and I think a cart would be an awesome solution for getting your gear in and your deer out behind the e-bike. So let's circle back around to some of the questions that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Do you have to spend $3,000 to $8,000 on a fancy hunting branded e-bike? Well, as most things in life, you do get what you pay for, and there is a broad range of prices. This bike here costs around $1,800 depending on when you purchase it, and while it certainly isn't the cheapest bike on the market, I think it strikes a really nice middle ground between features, quality, and price. One feature that was really important to me was that it has an integrated battery and controller. You're going to see some cheaper bikes that have the battery and controller mounted externally to the frame and they're just dangling off. For riding the streets and bike trails, that would be fine, but for riding through rough terrain, I really appreciated the idea that this bike has less items hanging off to get caught up, damaged, snagged on branches, etc. Also, the Aventon offers a 750-watt motor, and after riding this bike, I would really be hesitant to buy some of the cheaper 350 or 500-watt bikes. The Aventon also offers some really nice touches like hydraulic brakes, adjustable front suspension fork, a really comfortable seat, and an app that can adjust the settings, and it even has turn signals. On the other hand, the more expensive bikes might offer features like full suspension, larger tow capacities, or battery capacities. But most of the time what you're really paying for is a mid-drive motor system. While I haven't had the chance to ride a mid-drive system, I am told they will outperform this bike all day long and be better at climbing hills. But to really answer the question, do you need to buy the high-end e-bike? My answer is no, absolutely not. I've had a great time riding my Aventon bike and it has really performed really well for me. To be honest, I think if you're willing to sacrifice a few features like maybe hydraulic brakes, you could get a very similar bike to this one for a cheaper price and it would perform very well for you. But the big question still remains. Are e-bikes really worth it for hunting? Well, I think that's largely going to depend on your use case scenario. If you're hunting mostly flat land with a good network of trails and you want a quick and quiet way to access your stands while also keeping your scent off the ground, then an e-bike might be perfect for you. On the other hand, if you hunt extremely steep terrain or areas that don't have a good network of trails, an e-bike might not be right for you, or at least maybe a more budget-friendly e-bike might not be right for you. But really the number one question in my mind, or the number one factor in my mind when deciding if an e-bike is worth it, is are they actually legal on the land where you hunt, especially if you hunt public land? As I already mentioned, they aren't legal on most of the public land near me. However, I would get so much more benefit and use out of this if they were legal on public land. While I've enjoyed using my bike on private land, the truth is my used four-wheeler costs a fraction of what this e-bike cost. And the four-wheeler offers more power, more speed, better towing capacity, better cargo carrying capacity, and even has the ability to haul more than one person at a time if absolutely necessary. So that brings me to my final question. Should e-bikes be legal on public land? Now, I fully understand why some states would prohibit gas vehicles like side-by-sides, four-wheelers, and dirt bikes. There are issues with sound and disturbing of nature, and also often carry issues of erosion as well. But what is the issue with a nearly silent bike that are not going to cause nearly the erosion issues? Recently, I read an article that said e-bikes are just getting too powerful, and since they are so powerful they can haul deer out, then they should be illegal. But I'm confused. They make my life easier, so they should be illegal? That doesn't make sense to me. Now, I certainly recognize that e-bikes should not be allowed to roam the countryside off-trail with no restrictions. But much of our state land here in Pennsylvania is covered with mining roads, logging roads, or even roads that were recently used to install windmills. These roads are often gated and are illegal to ride an e-bike on, but I just can't see the harm in legalizing the use of e-bikes on these pre-existing roads. But what do you think? Should they be legal or not? Are they legal in your state? And do you wish they were legal in your state? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And let me know what you think about e-bikes in general. Do you have one? Do you want one? Do you wish you could get one for Christmas? Let me know what you think. And until next time, remember to get off YouTube and get outdoors into God's great creation.